This is the second worst relationship in the whole show. Or at least that's what a lot of people would say. The relationship between Miranda Hobbs and Steve Brady in Sex and the City and its sequels is often romanticized as a case of opposites attract. They share a great deal of chemistry and had many sweet moments that won over the audience at various stages of their relationship. By the end of the original series, they managed to stay together despite years of detractors, contradictions, differences, other partners, and their own personal setbacks. However, beneath those tender moments lay a deeper truth that would gradually reveal itself over time. They were simply too different from each other. This painful realization ultimately dealt the final blow to their relationship, ending more than 20 years together. Despite the unconventional reasons behind their breakup, it was something the audience had long seen coming, a situation that love alone couldn't save. Today we're going to explore Miranda and Steve's relationship. We'll dissect what happened, where things went wrong, who may be at fault, and what we as an audience can learn from their story.
Just a stupid half-court shot.
Not to me, it's not!
From the start, Miranda and Steve lived in two very different worlds. Miranda, a Harvard graduate and successful lawyer, thriving a life of structure, ambition, and material stability. Steve, on the other hand, was content with a simpler existence, working at a bar, living in a modest apartment, and embracing a laid-back philosophy. Their differences weren't just financial, it was emotional and psychological as well. Steve was emotionally immature, volatile, idealistic, and often naive, while Miranda was assertive, independent, and pragmatic. In some cases, such contrasting traits can create a more balanced dynamic, but when each person exists on a far end of that spectrum, the differences can destroy bridges instead of building them. This contrast didn't foster harmony. It created strain. Miranda often felt burdened by the responsibility of leading in both her personal and professional life, while Steve longed for acceptance and validation. Though Miranda tried to give him that, she could never fully succeed, because deep down, she didn't believe he was truly good enough for her. A harsh truth that stood in the dark contrast to how Steve saw her.
What about Steve? Steve's a friend, not a core shaker.
Miranda's choice to be with Steve wasn't born solely out of love. As I've discussed in my previous analysis on Miranda Hobbs, her decision was heavily influenced by fear. Fear of not finding anyone else. And perhaps the societal or narrative pressure to quote-unquote settle down. The pressure she felt from society, internalized urgency, and even from her friends led her to act in ways that fed the insecurities of an otherwise calculated and risk-averse character. Before Steve, Miranda had a string of lovers and suitors who were more aligned with her material and intellectual standards. They were either in her industry or adjacent to it. Successful, driven, and part of the same professional circles. Yet, despite their compatibility on paper, many of these relationships lacked emotional depth. In fact, the more quote-unquote ideal they seem, the more disappointing they often turned out to be. After enduring so many bitter experiences in the dating world, Miranda developed a resistance to romance, one that eventually hardened into a protective shell. That shell became her way of guarding the small flicker of hope she still held of finding someone to share her life with. That remaining hope, mixed with a societal pressure, created a toxic cocktail. One that made insecure and small what once was a loud, confident, and consistent woman.
I'm all alone, Carrie.
It led her to give in to situations she otherwise wouldn't have. She gave in at critical moments. Moments that often feel orchestrated by the plot to deliver a happy ending with Steve. For example, when he asked her to move in, when she became pregnant with Steve, when they began co-parenting, when she finally said, "I love you," and when she agreed to move to Brooklyn, despite her initial resistance in each one of them. And yet, there was an ambiguity in Miranda in regards to Steve. Although she gave in to a lot as a way to preserve their relationship with him, she always seemed to keep him at arm's length. A great example of this, in my opinion, is when she named their baby. Brady is not only the name of Miranda's son, but also Steve's last name, so the kid would have to carry Miranda's last name to avoid the confusion of using Steve's. Miranda compromised a lot, but not in a trusting way. Actually, it is quite the opposite, which is why I want to believe she was punished by it. It's quite ironic that she, as a lawyer, didn't stand on her own ground to defend what she wanted out of life and gave in to the fear of being alone. These decisions seemed driven more by anxiety and pressure than by passion or excitement. What started as a compromise to maintain peace for the sake of their relationship and their child slowly became a kind of prison, one she agreed to day by day, without realizing of how much it will cost her in the long run.
There's always gonna be things out of my reach.
Steve was on the opposite side of this situation. If Miranda thought Steve was not good enough for her, Steve thought Miranda was out of his league. And although he only accepted this fact once in their whole relationship, it was evident in his treatment of her and of himself in regards of her. Steve didn't just fall in love with Miranda, he put her on a pedestal. To him, Miranda was the epitome of success, confident, self-sufficient, and luminous. Whether or not she truly embodied these traits all the time was irrelevant. His perception of her became his emotional compass. His self-worth was heavily tied to her approval, and his affection often seemed like a quest for validation rather than mutual respect. There's a recurring pattern in Sex and the City, and oftentimes in real life as well. Confident women like Miranda attract men like Steve, or even Skipper, gentle, insecure, and often directionless. These people mistake the strength of their partner as a source they can draw from, hoping proximity will cure their own lack of self. But relationships that are based on absorbing another person's identity without doing the personal work don't thrive. Eventually, resentment or dependence builds, eroding intimacy.
This isn't gonna work, Steve.
There's good stuff here.
Not enough.
Both Miranda and Steve made compromises to keep the relationship afloat. But those compromises came at a great personal cost. Steve ended up living a life that exceeded his financial means but underperformed on his emotional expectations, while Miranda sacrificed comfort, identity, and personal standards to keep a partner that seemed to care about her. Their shared life wasn't a blend of both worlds. It was a patchwork of sacrifices that left both feeling unfulfilled. This imbalance was magnified in Sex and the City the movie and Just Like That, where their differences had not been reconciled but deepened. Steve never quite understood the importance and pressure of Miranda's legal career, while Miranda had to constantly juggle parenthood, work, and emotional labor with little support or recognition from Steve. And let's face it, whatever emotional sense of stability and success the family had was on Miranda's shoulders. As we noticed in the first part of the movie, she was overburdened with PTA meetings, bills, and her job, while Steve was expecting her to be more relaxed just because he asked for it. These are small elements that, in the end, were the cornerstone of what would end up being their dysfunctional lifestyle, but patched in a way that wasn't noticed by a lot of people, even the audience, and instead was played as a game of opposites attract.
He's a kid, and I end up nagging him all the time. I'm mean mommy.
While contrast can sometimes create balance in relationships, Miranda and Steve's difference were too vast. I'd like to use some examples of the situations I previously mentioned to explain more how each one of them would have behaved with their ideal partners. In an ideal situation, Miranda's partner would be one that understands the demands of her career and does everything to level the loads of the house care and housework as a way to lighten up life for Miranda, instead of just demanding her to take it easy. In the same way, Steve's ideal partner would have been one that has the same life rhythm he has, so in a way he doesn't feel pressured by the constant demands of his partner's lifestyle. Ideally, Miranda needed a partner who could take initiative and allow her to be vulnerable, a soft counterbalance to her hard exterior. Steve needed a nurturing presence who would admire his idealism and simplicity, or maybe someone who would constantly challenge it, but in a more relaxed way so he received that information as advice instead of as a threat. Neither of them received the energy they truly needed to grow as individuals within their relationship, and that caused many of the issues that they would face at the beginning of their relationship, but most notably by the end of it.
I had sex with someone else.
I've met someone.
Steve's infidelity was not a random betrayal, but the outcome of long-standing emotional neglect and mismatched needs. While he yearned for intimacy and closeness, Miranda was increasingly consumed by her demanding job and responsibilities. She didn't have much time to take care of the intimate part of their relationship because she was busy and burdened with everything else. And in a weird way, the first movie portrays her as somehow responsible for his sleep, by having her friends be a little too lenient on Steve's behavior while they crucify Big for leaving Carrie at the altar, which in my opinion are both equally terrible offenses, and although Steve's behavior may stem from marital neglect, it doesn't mean that this is a justifiable slip-up. Years later, when Miranda cheated on Steve and in Just Like That, this behavior was far less compassionate and much more aggressive than what she gave to him. The treatment of Miranda has been a constant bad taste in my mouth because why would she be the one who repeatedly contemplated moving out despite owning the home where they lived? This recurring action underscores the emotional burden she carried in maintaining their relationship. And even though they both incurred in the same behavior in different stages, for their lives and for practical different reasons, the root cause of it's basically the same. In spite of how much love there is between them, they are just not happy.
I changed who I was for you.
It's safe to say that after everything that went on between them, not only Miranda did settle for Steve, Steve also settled for Miranda, but in a different, more emotionally centered way. One of the most revealing aspects of their dynamic is that both Steve and Miranda had to fundamentally change part of themselves to make the relationship work. Steve tried to become someone good enough for Miranda. I can safely say that the root of his own development is because he wanted to be seen and respected by her. As I mentioned before, it seems that for Steve, Miranda's approval is crucial, and the fact that he never fully had it made him feel that all his efforts were unsuccessful. And Miranda tried to mold herself into someone who could have it all, even the milestones she wasn't sure she ever wanted, which made her alter her life in ways that were diverting her from her ideal life and creating a pressure that she should have never had to submit to. A really good relationship shouldn't require such drastic alterations. When people change who they are just to be accepted, the result is not connection but quiet self-abandonment.
What?
Steve and Miranda's story is a sobering reminder that settling is not a viable foundation for a lasting, fulfilling relationship. Their love, while sincere, was built on compromise, fear, and unrealistic expectations. They didn't grow into each other. They shrank into roles they thought they had to play. Honest relationships require alignment in values, mutual admiration, and emotional safety, none of which can thrive when either partner is pretending to be someone they're not. Their journey tells us something important. You can care deeply for someone and still not be right for them. And that perhaps is the most painful but necessary truth of it all. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Bye-bye!